Happy Tuesday. I see the light on. That means this is working. I'm so excited to hang with y'all. I actually realized what we needed to do last week was for me to pull up the Facebook group as well so I could see all your comments because I wasn't able to see them super well. But I'm so looking forward to our conversation. We're going to talk about some of my favorite topics, how to think like a CEO and how to make strategic decisions in your business. Before we dive in, first, how's everyone doing? I think we're hitting summer. Well, if you're in the northern hemisphere, it is summer solstice tomorrow, which is wild to me, which means we're kind of almost halfway through the year, which is always kind of mind-boggling. So I want to hear how everyone's doing. If you're in the southern hemisphere, that would be the opposite, right? You're heading into winter, but I want to hear how everyone's summer is doing. And remind everyone, instead of a free masterclass this month, we're doing something fun. I was gonna say crazy, but I don't think it's crazy. I think it's more fun and just feels very in alignment and in integrity and feels really good for me to do and feels very abundant to be able to share with you. We are opening up my 6-week sales course, Sell Out Without Feeling Like a Sellout, which is usually a paid course. It's basically free. We charge $99 because I want you to sign up and have some skin in the game. However, until June 30th, for 2 weeks, we are opening it up for free. We did this during COVID and we're doing it again for lots of reasons, because I can, because I think the course industry and the course module program, I don't know, however you want to call it, in our industry is a little broken. I don't like hiding information behind paywalls. I think sales are so important for you in business. I know we have a funky economy. We have a bit of a funky time in our industry, and understanding marketing, sales, how to sell without the ick, both the mindset and the strategy behind that, I think is so essential as a business owner and is so supportive. And while I've been loving giving away free coaching sessions, but I have to rein those in a little bit so that I can make sure I am focused on my clients and not overbooking myself or anything like that. One of the things I can offer you is this course for free. So this is me putting my money where my mouth is, me wanting to be of service to you. I think it's a really valuable course. I think we could have charged far more for it than we do, but doesn't even matter what we charge for it because it is free through the 30th. So I will drop a link for that. There's probably some links floating around in my Facebook group. If you sign up, you will get instant access to it. I think we have it set up now that you get access to all 6 weeks at once, and it also gets stripped out to you. Just give me your email address so that we know where to send it over to. So that is what's going on this month. I have started working on next month's masterclass, though. It's a new one. I'm excited for it, but I will share that next month. Otherwise, it's confusing to share all the things with you. But that is free for you. And let me just pull up my group so that way if we have comments, since I couldn't see them last time. There we are. Okay, I can see myself. Beautiful. So this way I will be able to see comments if you all have them. If you're here live, say hi. Let me know how you're doing as we're talking through this conversation today. I hope it'll be really valuable for you. If you have questions, reflections, I love to hear those and I love having a conversation with you. So I will be able to see the comments now. Now let's chat. Thinking like a CEO, running your business like a business, making strategic decisions. I want to have this conversation because I know if you're here, we talk so much about defining and owning your role as a CEO, having a CEO mindset, having a CEO identity. There's probably some masterclasses still floating around in the group around that. And I know if you're here, that's something that's important to you. I know if you're here, you understand, even if there are days you want to Netflix and chill, that your business needs you and you want to show up on market and that data is important and that thinking like a business owner and being strategic is important. And I know that sometimes that can be a little confusing. And I think understanding what does it mean to think like a CEO and how can I think like a CEO and how can I make strategic decisions and what are the things to pay attention to can be very confusing. I know because I wouldn't have a job if that weren't the case. So many of my business owners who are brilliant. I work with very smart business owners. All of my clients are super, super brilliant, whether they're building their business to their first 6 figures or scaling to $1 million plus. I have a client who just shared they're on track for $1 million this year, so that'll be another client crossing the $1 million mark, right? Or if they're running $2 million plus businesses, wherever my clients are at, they're really smart. It's not like they don't know how to think like a CEO or how to think strategically. I notice sometimes we need some support to see the forest through the trees. So I want to dive into all of that today and give you some tools, give you some resources to support you around that. So what we're going to dive into is the mindset. You've probably heard me talk about quite a bit, but it is really what I believe is like the core central aspect of thinking like a CEO that doesn't require you to be, I don't know, manifestation vibes. And I'm all for manifestation, but that doesn't require you to be high vibe or anything like that. That really will serve you to run and treat your business like a business and help you spot and close the right gaps in your business. We're going to talk about the hurdle that every single business owner has. I don't care who you are. This is a hurdle every business owner has when it comes to running a business, growing, scaling a business. And I think this is a hurdle that can make it challenging sometimes to understand what decisions to make in business, how to reach your data, how to understand how to move forward. So we're gonna talk about that a little bit just to normalize this, but also to see where to spot that. And then I will help you understand the number one thing we need to look at when we're taking a look at metrics. This is something I support clients with all the time, because there should be such talk about data and metrics right now in our space. And I love that. I love that. And I think there's we were in such a the pendulum was really on the manifesting side of things, which I love as well. I think we've swung a little bit more to practical business, running business, naked business. And I think sometimes that can also be a bit confusing to understand what to look at. Or I just see this through my clients a lot, how often numbers, if we don't understand what they mean, can really have us spin out. So we're going to talk about just what to pay attention to. In some examples, I'll give you some client examples from clients who are at multi-$6 million, just who are at that stage, and just some of the metrics and some of the ways we're looking at data and interpreting them, just to help you understand how to make some of those strategic decisions, so that you're not making yourself wrong, but so you also know how to discern how to leverage the information you have in front of you, or just even what to pay attention to. I am just realizing too, y'all, don't mind me, I just realized my computer needs to be plugged in, or we might lose juice while I'm chatting with you. So don't mind me while I just plug this in over here. And there we go. You'll also have to let me know. Are you hearing a whirring sound? That my computer might not be happy with us, but we're gonna roll with things anyway. I think we have enough juice to run through the conversation. Okay, so let's dive in first to the CEO mindset that I think is everything. Y'all can probably guess what this is because I talk about this so much. But that's neutrality. That's understanding how to get to neutral and how to think from a neutral place. When I think about a CEO mindset and a CEO identity and really learning how to think like a CEO in your business, I think about this so much more in terms of how do you manage your mind to manage your business is what I'm always saying, but how do you manage your mind to get to neutral? Versus, I think sometimes what we think with a CEO mindset, or when we think about mindset, I think a lot of the teachings, and there's nothing wrong, this is my opinion, you don't have to agree with me, but I think a lot of times it is more taught in terms of either positivity, not even toxic positivity, but just a strong CEO mindset is being super positive and super I'm going to make $1 million. I'm a millionaire. I'm super positive. Everything is great. And I'm here for that as well. But I don't always know that helps us to think like a CEO. I think there are benefits to that, but I think it can also sometimes swing into the more empowerment side of things, which I think is great as well. And kind of let's get really hyped up and think that means you're I'm a powerful boss babe kind of energy and mindset, which again, I am here for. I am not making that wrong. I think there is a place and time for that. And I think that can be beneficial on the mindset side of things. But when I think about being a business owner and creating a sustainable business and a profitable business that stands the test of time, and having something where you are really showing up to treat and run a business like a business, the mindset I have both seen for myself and seen through clients to be most supportive is a neutral mindset, a mindset that knows how to get to neutral. And whether that means knowing how to self-regulate so you can feel neutral, or knowing how to tame your thoughts so that you can get to neutral. And I think that when I think of mindset work, when I think of what I'm supporting my clients with, that's so much more of what we're doing. And that doesn't mean we're not looking at fears or looking at stories or looking at limiting beliefs, but we're doing so in the way to not necessarily fix them or solve them, or sometimes we're rewriting them, sometimes we're changing them, but a lot of times it's how can we really neutralize them? How can we not let them run the show and really get to a place where we're not jacked up and we can just very neutrally see the playing field in front of us and make decisions from that place. I quote Trevor McEwen's book a lot, and I'm trying to think of the name right now. It is evading me. It Takes What It Takes. And he has another one, but It Takes What It Takes. He is and I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, he is a sports coach, a high-performing sports coach. He's worked with some of the top sports teams, sports players in the NFL, I think with tennis, and just in different arenas. And the reason I bring him up here, and I brought him up before on the podcast and in different ways, is his whole theory, his whole work is around helping his athletes with mindset and with performance. but it really is what we're talking about here. He talks so much about getting to neutral and shifting to neutral and using that as the place that helps you see what's the next play in front of you, essentially, to move forward. And I think it's a great book, and I think it's such a great philosophy, and it really helps us think about what it means to be a CEO and what it means to be an athlete, right? What it means to be a high performer who is looking to create, to whether it's to hit the next yard or to win a game, what is required. And it really is being able to keep neutrally looking at what is the play in front of you, to be able to let go of the past plays, right? The fumbled ball, the point you didn't score, the point the other team scored, to be able to let that go. And also to not think about 3 games ahead or the championship or who you're playing next, but literally to be able to neutrally focus on the next play ahead of you. That's how teams win championships. That's how teams excel. And it's the same for us in business as CEOs. And so I really invite you to think about this and to play with, where in my business maybe am I not showing up neutrally? Where do I have an opportunity to do the mindset work to really get to neutral so that I can focus on the next play in front of me, so to say? Because this is where I see the most strategic plays, the best decisions, what really moves a business forward. But this is also how I see business owners stay out of their own way. So often when we don't want to show up to do content, or we don't want to show up to sell, or we don't want to show up to serve a client, or, oftentimes it's because our brain and our nervous system is jacked up around something. And I think then we also put this pressure on us where it's like, well, I can't show up unless I'm super, super feeling positive. Or it's like the pendulum has swung the other way. And I want to invite you to say, like, to really play with, what if it's more, how can I get to neutral? And neutral is really going to be the best place for me to show up from anyway. I think it also just takes the pressure off mindset and off your business a lot. I think sometimes otherwise there is this pressure. It's like, I need to feel super positive. I need to feel super amazing and lit up and inspired and to be able to make a decision, or to know that this is a strategic decision that moves me forward. And I know, oh gosh, I'm trying to think of what live stream, if this was a podcast. I know we've talked about this, but I'm all for being lit up. I am all for being positive. These are things I love to feel. But I think we also have to remember, if we think about the emotional spectrum, whether we're feeling super negative or super positive, we're on extremes, right? We're actually not super regulated. If I'm on cloud like 10, because everything is just so amazing and blissed out, I'm here for that. I love that. I have days like that. There are days I feel like that in my business. But that's actually not the most sustainable mindset or emotional state to run my business from. It feels great. I'm here for it. And it's also a lot of pressure and sort of unrealistic for me to expect to feel that way all the time to run my business. The place I'm really able to best show up from and to serve my clients and to show up to create content, do anything, is not super cloud 10. It's also not super cloud 0, if that's a thing. Right? It's more that neutral midpoint. It's not flat affect, but it's also not like almost like what we would consider manic. It really is going to be more of that neutrality, and that is the brain space that really also helps you to see that clear play in front of you, that helps you to show up in a different way, that helps you to really understand what is going to be that strategic decision for you. If this is making sense, if you have questions, if you have thoughts, I think I can actually see the comments today, which is very, very exciting. But hopefully this is landing. Again, I know we've talked about this in different ways, but it feels really relevant because it's been coming up quite a bit for clients, and I think probably just because of some of the conversation in our space. Let me just see if there were notes here. I start to riff on things and then remember that I have notes for you, and things I want to make, bullets I want to make sure we talk about. So bringing this back up over, okay, so that's what I would really say in terms of how to think like a CEO, and how do we make strategic decisions? I think that sounds so great, right? Like, we are strategic, we make strategic decisions, but how do you know if you're making a strategic decision or not? And one of the things I want to talk about is how do you take that neutral mindset and take a look at the metrics you're looking at, the data you have at, and actually understand what they're telling you and make a decision without getting in your own way. And I really wanted to bring this because I have just seen what a difference this has made in my clients. If I'm looking at the client I shared who just celebrated that they're on track for $1 million in their business, what we've been really great at doing is really understanding the data in their business and their sales process and what actually drives sales and results, and making decisions based on that versus based on where I see a lot of people get tripped up, which is just getting stuck in vanity metrics or in seeing a metric or a data point and not understanding what it's actually telling them. And let me actually go to speak to that first, because this is, I was saying, there's just a human element, there's a human hurdle that everyone faces in business. And I think this is the thing we really want to understand if we're thinking about how to think like a CEO and make strategic decisions, to be very mindful of. Yes, you get to be neutral. Yes, you get to think like a CEO. That's what I want to encourage you to do. And you are a human running a business. And as a human, you have an ego. I don't care how like self-aware you are, how evolved you are. I'm not trying to create stories. We just all have an ego. I don't care how much you've worked on like killing off your ego. We all have an ego, and it serves a purpose and a point, but we all have an ego mind. And I think that is very important to understand, and to really understand when we're making decisions, when you're thinking like a CEO, when you're looking at metrics, when you're looking at data, when you're looking to make strategic decisions, and to really check in with, is this coming from ego? Is my ego brain running the business right now? Or is my neutral CEO strategic brain? And that's one of the reasons I really love neutrality, because neutrality is devoid of ego. I think sometimes, again, when the pendulum's swinging, right, whether we're feeling super negative or super positive, sometimes there can be a little bit of ego wrapped up in that. And again, there are purposes to the ego. I don't even want to make that wrong. But when it comes to making strategic decisions that move your business forward, our ego tends not to be the best business owner. It tends not to be the most neutral or most strategic. It tends to read data really incorrectly. It tends to get its feelings hurt. It tends to really not want to get, butthurt, not get rejected. It tends to want the things that look really flashy and good, and not always what is going to be more of the long growth or strategically move your business forward. And I think understanding this is really, again, important, because it's just so easy to have the ego get jacked up, especially when you're looking at things like, hey, what decision do I need to make here in my business to move my business forward, when I'm taking a look at what's going on. Ego is often going to tell you to do the thing that gets you the shiny result, or that helps you avoid the uncomfortable thing, as opposed to what neutrally is actually the best decision that moves you forward. Let me see if I have any. Yes, I do have lots of examples. I'm just thinking which way I want to take us here. I'm going to give you some examples, and then I'll flip back around to some things to think about with making those strategic examples or strategic decisions. But just an example here, I think this is actually a past client of mine who scaled from about 6 figures to $1 million while we were working together. And a lot of what we worked on is exactly what we're talking about here, really defining and owning her role as a CEO, understanding how to treat and run her business like a business, understanding she has an ego, and how to work with that, and how to manage her mind around that, and how to put her ego to the side when taking a look at her business and her strategy and what was actually moving her business forward. And one of the things we looked at, I'm not saying this is right for everyone, but just to give you an example here, one of the things when we were working together that she was really focused on was her social media growth, and that's where she was getting results from. And that was also, I don't want to say it was ego driven, but there was some, we all have an ego around this. And I don't even think that is bad. I think there are some benefits to that. I think if you don't have, I honestly think for some business owners, if you don't have a little bit of ego and desire for those kind of like visibility metrics, it's also tough, I think, for some business owners to want to show up and to drive the movie forward. So again, there's a purpose for this, but there was, her strategy was very focused around that, and that definitely was affecting like what she was looking very much at the vanity metrics, we'll just call them that, and using those as a determiner for success or not successful, and really what to double down on or not, right? What vanity metric was, like what drove vanity metrics was really, at the time, was driving her strategic action forward. And when we step back a little bit, when she stepped back, I mean, full credit to her for, like, I asked some questions, but she really did the work here. And I think this is just understanding the power of coaching too. It's not like I knew the answer to blow up her business to $1 million. I knew the questions to ask her. I knew the things to reflect to her. She found the answer to this. But what we really saw was there was another strategy for her that wasn't on, it's still online, but not leveraging social media, and was way less visible. It was more SEO and Google related. And for her particular business and business model, again, this is probably not going to be what's right for everyone. So don't hear this is the strategy that blows you up to $1 million. And I want to be mindful too that I'm protecting client confidentiality. So being a little bit vague here with results or strategy and results and details here. But that really required her to buckle down and do a lot behind the scenes. And that is ultimately what moved her business forward. That was a very strategic decision. And the reason that decision worked so well for her and helped her to blow up her business is she made that from a neutral CEO mindset. Her ego brain, right? Her ego brain looked at the vanity metrics and really wanted to double down on those. And that might, I mean, I'm sure that would have worked to some degree. I think to some degree, anytime we double down on things, they work. But when she was able to get to neutral and put some of that aside and put some of the other things that were getting pulled up for her, we had to definitely do some mindset work around this and like clear out some fears and clear out some things that were coming up. When she was able to do that and get to a neutral, that helped her to see a very clear next play for her that really strategically was going to open up far more possibility for growth. And because she was showing up with that neutral mindset, it also helped her to commit to showing up for that strategy that honestly wasn't as exciting to her brain, right? Because it didn't give her the same like dopamine hits that maybe the more ego-driven strategy did. I'm saying ego very lightly here, but it just didn't give her that same like lit up feeling every moment. But the results definitely gave her a lit up feeling, right? The enjoyment in her business definitely gave her a lit up feeling. And so I'm reflecting this again here because I think that's the difference between having a CEO, that neutral CEO mindset that really looks at strategically what makes sense to move forward versus like just what is ego driven or vanity metrics driven or just like what feels good or like what feels super positive and I'm all for what feels good and I am all for alignment. I'm always encouraging clients to find what's the strategy in alignment. I have clients who don't even use social media and we find a way to make offline work for them. And within that, we're still really tapping into that neutral CEO mindset to make strategic decisions because there are often times that it doesn't feel a super high vibe for them to show up to go to a networking event, for example, or to do some personal outreach, for example, right? But that from a very neutral mindset, they're able to make the strategic decision that is what serves the results they want in their business and to show up for them. But kind of bringing it back to what we were talking about originally, when you can start to like parcel out the ego, when you can start to parcel out the emotion, and this isn't like we're going to be robots, it doesn't mean you don't get to feel great in your business, but when you can again come back to more neutral, this is when you get to see those opportunities that can be so strategic to blow you up. And I think one of the things that is probably the most challenging for all of us in this space, right? If you're here, you're likely heart-centered, you're likely passion-driven, you're likely creative, you likely have a big heart, you're likely a big feeling person, you likely do your business or start your business or run your business because you love the work you do, right? I get you, I see you, I feel you, I am you. Like I love my work so much, I love my clients so much, I care deeply about my work, I feel so fulfilled and lit up by what I do. And right, that is almost more the emotional side to me when I am in my role as a CEO and looking at my business like a CEO and making strategic decisions. Of course, all of that is relevant and I keep all of that in mind, and that is all of what I'm making decisions in service of so that I can feel like. But the more I can take out my personal emotion, my personal feelings, not like Kim as the person, but take out some of those personal things and really more neutrally look at the business and make decisions, that's the more I'm showing up as a CEO. And that's really what helps my business grow and thrive. And it doesn't mean there isn't room for both. It doesn't mean that if we strategically, I'll share a strategic decision we made recently, and I'm lit up when I'm taking action on that strategy. But to get to that decision, I first had to remove the personal ego and emotion from some of the data I was looking at to be able to make that strategic decision that I can feel lit up within. I'll give you that example, and then I'm going to circle back because I wanted to share a little bit about some things to think about with strategic decisions. But that, I think, is another great example. We got captions all of a sudden. That's so fun. I'm just like always amazed at the things that pop up that I don't know are going to. Well, the other example that I'll share here that might be helpful for people know, as I'm sure y'all know, maybe you don't know. If you don't know, this is great for me to share with you as well. But we, a couple weeks ago, started a second podcast episode every week on the podcast, One Question, Unapologetic Questions for Unapologetic Results, where I've taken the bite-sized biz lessons I used to do on Instagram that I would have a couple times a week, and I've turned that into a bite-sized biz lesson on the podcast where I'm answering one of your questions or a client question as a You Asked, I Answered episode, and we have a second episode going out. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is I want to help you see the CEO mindset and how this led to looking at data clearly and the strategic decision around that. And I have a couple other thoughts popping up that I want to share around this, but just so maybe this is helpful for everyone to hear. One of the things I was looking at is when I was doing bite-sized biz lessons, right? My story views, that is just not the main place I focus on. Instagram sort of like it sounds horrible, but it gets my sloppy second, right? My podcast and this Facebook group are my priority. I'd say email list after that, but Instagram, we absolutely show up and focus on. And I've been focusing on that more recently, been having a lot of fun on there. But that is just not the main place that I drive audience viewership. And so when I was looking at, from a very neutral standpoint, the time and cost it takes me personally to record those bite-sized biz lessons for Instagram, and the time and team expense to post those and to write the captions underneath. And I was looking at that expense in terms of what the return for my business is, as opposed to the podcast where we get much more listeners, right? That's where I'm strategically driving traffic. And I also know that's what drives a lot of conversions for me, where a lot of clients come from for obvious reasons. I could really see the discrepancy there. And so it made sense then for me to make the decision to stop doing those stories on Instagram in that way and to move them over to the podcast, where it's less of a team time spend and I get a larger conversion point in terms of what that does to bring in clients for me. Hopefully this is making sense. Now, the reason I share this with you is if I had not been in a neutral CEO mindset and I had been more in my ego, or I had been more in my fear, or more in my insecurity, and I was also trying to be a good business owner, it's like, let me take a look at my data, let me take a look at my metrics, let me see what's going on. And I had simply looked at my story views and what it cost me to do those stories and what they're driving in terms of conversions and the number of views I was getting. And it would have just been very easy to say, I suck, or these numbers aren't high enough, or they're good enough, or like how I want more Instagram followers, or I want more engagement on Instagram. How do I increase my engagement on Instagram, right? Because that feels really important to me. And I think in some degree, like we're not saying engagement isn't valuable, but it would be very easy to get wrapped up in that narrative. And the difference there is like that is more ego driven, that is more emotional driven, that is more personal driven, that is more vanity metrics driven. That's also not coming from a neutral CEO mindset that understands, and we'll come back to this, but what my business goals are and what drives results and conversions in my business, as opposed to seeing like, great, this is very, very useful information because I spend personal time and my time is quite valuable. And everyone's time is valuable, but in terms of I'm also spending money on team, and every hour I spend doing something in my business that isn't serving a client, right, takes away from revenue because I have a one-on-one only model. So seeing that, but also understanding what does drive results or bigger conversions in my business, when I can put on my neutral CEO hat and not make this personal, not make this mean I suck or don't suck or I'm good enough or not good enough, or this means there's something wrong with my Instagram strategy or people don't like me, I don't know, whatever noise comes up there, because I think social media can do a lot for us, right? Or not get into the kind of like, it's almost like the dopamine addiction driven part of social media, where it's like, how do I just get more likes and likes on here? And instead step back and say, this is very useful information, and how can I just look at this information but also discern what is it actually telling me? And what it's actually telling me is very helpful. And I do know when people listen to those, they get a lot of value from those because we get comments from those, and I do know that also drives conversions. I just know I already have a platform over here that costs us less to produce, that's easier for me to record, that we get far more reach already, that I don't have to pour extra time, energy, team spend into to get more reach, that we can leverage. So hopefully this is making sense here, but I think that's the power of really practicing thinking like a CEO, getting to neutral, but also taking a look at metrics before you make a strategic decision to understand what it's actually telling you to make that decision. I think with that, and this is what I wanted to share with you all, I think there's a couple things we want to look at. I'm talking about this with clients so often because it's just very interesting, especially recently. I've just had, my clients will all think I'm speaking about them I think this happens whenever there's something sort of like in the zeitgeist and in the energy field. But I've had multiple clients come to me with this recently where, because they're focused on data more and metrics more, which I love that. Like that is what we do as CEOs. That's so important in your business. Like that tells you so much. But it's almost like we're looking at the surface level metrics and not understanding or reading what they mean. And it's just been causing, actually, what's really fascinating, a lot of mindset trash coming up for people. And really, we want data and metrics to be neutral, just to give us some neutral information to make smart decisions from. It's actually not a personal thing at all. But it's just been fascinating to see how much that has been triggering for many of my clients, just some of the mindset trash in terms of worthiness, being good enough, not good enough, what's working, what's not working, in businesses that are working very, very well. Multiple clients who are at multi-six figures who've been really spun out around something. And what I want, and I'm sharing this with you because if this is coming up for multiple clients, I'm sure it's coming up for some people here, to remember and to look first and foremost, what are your results telling you? Your results, that's a metric as well. If you're booking clients, if you're making money, if things are converting for you, that is a metric that also tells you things are working, and to be really mindful of painting a picture, whereas if your, I don't know, views on a certain post or signups for a certain class maybe aren't at a certain number you want, instead of seeing that as an opportunity to increase conversions and to see, oh, there's just room to bring more people through your funnel, to be mindful of if you're making the sales you want, having the conversions you want, to also not suddenly make the story that maybe lower number means that your strategy isn't working or you're not doing something right. And what I think is really helpful is to also, again, be able to get back to neutral, right? Have that CEO, put that CEO hat on, and to really take a look at what are the numbers, what's the data, what are the metrics, what is the information in front of you actually saying. And we talk so much in coaching. I talk about this in sales. I talk about this with coaching, but understanding the thing under the thing. And I think this is true with data, with metrics as well. There is always going to be the surface level information. And then the more neutrally we can look at something, this is not creating false stories, but the more we can then understand a little bit of what's actually going on and what the impact it has on you, your business, your goals, and your values, the more you're actually going to be able to leverage the information, the data, the metrics in your business in a way to make those strategic decisions, as opposed to, again, getting caught up in the ego, getting caught up in the emotion, getting caught up in the stories the brain wants to tell us, or getting caught up in what so-and-so online is doing that we have no idea what's going on for them in their business. A couple of things that I think can be really helpful, and this is stuff, I always say this on our lives, but I'm just going to say it again. I'm so aware that some of these things are things y'all know. They're Captain Obvious things, but hopefully they will just help you remember that business is not complicated. These are just sometimes things when monkey mind, brain gremlins, ego get in the way that we sometimes forget. But when you're looking at making a strategic decision, when you're looking at the information in front of you, I think we always want to take a step back first and understand, what is your business vision? What are your business goals? What is your business model? What are your business values? And what do you already know works for you? Where do your clients come from? Where do your sales come from? Where does the money in your business come from? And I say this again because otherwise it is very, very, very easy, right? If I looked at, and of course, the more information you have, the more you'll already know the answer to this. But if I use the client, for example, who was doing amazing on social media, she had a big Instagram account, but when we saw the traffic and when we saw the leverage point in her business that for her particular model really allowed her to scale with the least amount of effort and work, was more SEO based, more Google ads based, right? That was very helpful, but that was helpful because we also understood her business goals and her big business vision, and we understood what was driving the money in her business. And that would be the same situation could be true, the same metrics could be true, but I could have another client who is really looking at getting brand sponsorship, or who is doing a one-on-one like me, for example, where what drives clients and results in their business and money in their business is more relationship based. I mean, it's all relationship based, but more that interaction, and more than having a lifestyle brand, and more those touch points on social media are what are creating those conversions. And So we might have the literal same data points, but because we have different business models, because we have different business goals, because we have different business values, because we have different ways that we know are driving the end result, we might make very, very different decisions. And that's how you can make a strategic decision in your business. And I think what, again, trips us up is when, and what I think can have a decision that is strategic, but maybe not the best strategic for your business, is when we forget to put that CEO hat on again, because either we're in emotionality, we're making things mean something personal about us, or we're looking at what so-and-so is doing, right? I think it is so easy to do that. And even if someone has a very, very similar business to you, that doesn't necessarily mean that what works for them is what's going to work for you. And I think this is just the thing, again, everyone here knows this, but I think what we want to always be able to come back to, and that is thinking like a CEO, that's treating and running your business like a business, and as opposed to, just doing what feels good in the moment and hoping that makes you some money. And so I think this always is asking you to come back to what is actually driving results for you in your business, and understand, the more you know that, the more you know what the results are that you want, what that bigger vision is, what the model is, right? What your business goals are, and also then what is helping you reach those goals, the more you know what to pay attention to, and the more you understand the story data is telling you. And I think that's just something helpful to remember when you're making those strategic decisions, just understanding the information in front of you. What story is it telling you? What clues is it giving you? And really playing with that. I'm trying to think of we were talking about the sports analogy example, and I think maybe a way to even think about this is if you're a football team and you're down, gosh, this is going to show us how, like, not off the top of my head I can think about football, but I think they work in 7 points. So let's say you're down a touchdown, and you've just fumbled the ball, and your goal is to win this game, right? Your strategic decision for the next play, if you're not getting super emotional, if you're not looking at what the other team is doing, if you're not like, what was the last play they just did, what worked for them, if you're instead looking at our whole focus and goal is to actually make a touchdown, and it kind of doesn't matter, all the rest of that only matters, like, we just need to know what that team is doing, and what we need to look at is what works for us, what strategies work for us, what have we seen based on the other information this game isn't working for us, how can we double down on that to win the game, right? That's a very neutral strategic CEO mindset, and that's how we can then, as a team, you can say, great, and this is the next play we play, and this is the next play, and it doesn't matter that this other blue 42 strategy works really well for that so-and-so team. Our players don't have strength in that. Our players are, really great kickers, and so our whole strategy is around how do we get so-and-so to kick the ball to make as many field goals as possible. Probably not all how football goes, right? But that is getting on your own playing field and kind of tuning out the noise and being able to make strategic decisions, even if there's information that says, like, hey, this other shiny thing could work for you. And similarly, what you wouldn't do is say, like, hey, if our goal is to win this football game, and that's the game we're playing, and these are the strategies, and we want to get to the Super Bowl, what you probably wouldn't do is then start to look at strategies that help you win a soccer game, right? Even if there's maybe some similarity there, unless you were trying to think and be innovative and think outside the box because you want to bring something new to the table. And I know that's such a ridiculous example, but we do this in business all the time. All clients come to me and they're essentially bringing me a soccer strategy for the football game they want to win. And again, I'm all for, like, let's create a blue ocean. Let's bring in things from other industries and see how they apply. But I think that's very different than forgetting the game you're playing and forgetting the goal for you in that game and understanding what the next play ahead is and what tends to work for the strengths of your team. I could take this analogy way too far, but hopefully that makes sense for y'all. And that's really the thing I want to invite you to keep coming back to, and remind yourself that is thinking like a CEO, that is really being a CEO. I'm just seeing if there's anything else I wanted to share here that I promised I was going to share here. I have a bunch of examples. I'll give some more examples here as we close this out. But bringing this back to, I just want to make sure what the promises I told you, if there was anything, the piece here, well, we talked about this a little bit, how to avoid turning data into another place you make yourself wrong. I think, again, it's really understanding what drives conversions for you, and then really seeing that as the place to look to make strategic decisions, and to remember that a strategic decision doesn't mean that everything is perfect, or that you don't ever have something you need to adjust, or that it feels perfectly awesome in the moment. I think that's, again, where some of the mindset stuff some of the narratives in our space can get us a little confused. I really want to keep bringing it back to how can you be neutral, and then when you're making strategic decisions, you're taking the information you have and making a decision that is strategic based on that. So it's not a guess, right? We're not just, and it's also not based on emotion or based on, I mean, I'm here for intuition. There's space for that too. But even intuition, I think intuition is, it's your brain's subconscious thin slicing data and information and giving you that information. I think there's room for both there. And I think intuition is actually more data driven than we realize, and intuition is very different from an emotional reaction. I think intuition is actually a lot more neutral, right? And it's a lot more of a, like, I'm just very calm and neutrally, like, this is the intuitive hit I have. And if we were to peel that back and, like, be able to really figure out where that intuitive hit came from, I bet part of that is based on all of the lifetime data you have around a certain aspect of your business, or the people in your audience, or just the data points you've collected, even if they're just in your brain subconsciously. Anyway, I will not go down a rabbit hole there, but intuition is different than an emotional reaction, right? We're looking really at those responses. But what I want to invite you to remember is, when you make that strategic decision from that neutral CEO mindset, which can also be intuitive, that more neutral space, that is an invitation for you then to take action with trust, but that we're always testing in business. And I think that's the other place that I think strategic decisions and also looking at data and metrics can sometimes unintentionally have really smart business owners get really frozen and stall progress and results, because I think there's this way in which we either expect data to give us a perfect, or it doesn't have to be data, but information to give us a perfect answer, and to almost use it as a place in which we're it's sort of like, well, if I can figure out how to read this perfectly, nothing bad will ever happen. I'll never have a challenge. Like, this is just always going to be 1 + 1 = 2. And that's just not how business works, because we're humans serving other humans, and humans are both predictable and they are also irrational, right? And there are just so many myriad factors that can go into something. And so I think just remembering not to stranglehold when you're looking at, like, that, remembering this is why we want to get to a neutral mindset, as opposed to when we're more in that emotionality. If you're not feeling as safe, if you're really wanting control, if you're wanting more stability, it can be very easy to hold the information you're looking at and the decisions you're wanting to make, because you're looking for the perfect solution and next step forward to make sure everything is perfect, and that you never have a challenge, and that there's never a hiccup, or there's never information you get back that is in air quotes failure or rejection. And instead, I want to offer you that the best strategic decision that is neutral is still a test, right? It's still something you're going to test and then find out, great, and then what information do we get back? And that doesn't mean you did it wrong if it doesn't give you what you expected. That means you just have more information to make the next strategic decision with. If we go back to the football example, if you have the best play ever and you throw the ball downfield, if that's how we talk about this, gosh, I sound ridiculous here. Forgive me for those of you who are football fans. But if you have the best play ever, and you know this works with your team strengths, and you throw it and the wind alters your ball, the player is human and doesn't exactly get where you want them to, and basically they don't catch the ball and they don't make the touchdown, that doesn't subtly mean that you were wrong, or that wasn't a great strategic play, or that you didn't show up neutrally to, like, lead your team. That means that you were neutral, you had a great strategic play, you really focused on the next play ahead, you executed 100%, and you didn't get the results you wanted. And so now, instead of obsessing over, gosh, that didn't go the way I wanted and I suck and all of that, the opportunity is to just rinse and repeat. How do you get to neutral? How do you look at the next play in front of you? How do you take that information where it's like, great, okay, so maybe we want to try a shorter run here because for whatever reason that's not playing to our strengths. I'm taking the football analogy a little too long, but I hope we're seeing that here because the whole idea here and what I want to invite you to think about as we're thinking about how do you think like a CEO and how do you make strategic decisions is also not having the pendulum swing where it's like if I'm thinking like a CEO and if I'm making strategic decisions, that means everything is perfect and that means there's never anything that doesn't give me the exact result I want, or there's never anything to navigate or to refine or to adjust, because all that's going to do is just bring you back into exactly the opposite of what we're talking about, neutrality, and that is where we get such a stranglehold around decisions and actions, and that can cause either a lot of pressure on the execution side of things or a lot of frozen immobile, oh my gosh, I can't say the word, why can't I think of the word? Immobility. But basically where you're just overthinking, overanalyzing because you're wanting that perfect solution instead of being able to move forward on it. So I really want to invite you to remember that as we are practicing getting to neutral, as we're practicing thinking and showing up in your role as a CEO to treat and run your business like a business, as you're practicing making strategic decisions, nowhere in here is that means everything is perfect. That never means that we have to take a look at something or that we never have a fumble or that we never have to refine the strategy, right? A strategic decision is the best decision based on the information you have at the time that's coming from that neutral mindset, that's coming from understanding what the information your business is telling you and making the next play with the players on your team. And that doesn't mean you'll never lose a game, right? You can have the best strategic football game in the world and there's always going to be in a game someone who wins the game and someone who doesn't. And that doesn't mean the team that doesn't wasn't good enough, didn't play well, didn't play a strategically perfect game. It just means that's the nature of a football game, and it's the same in business. And I know that's not the answer any of us want to hear. I think we all want to hear like, well, what's the perfect way to make $1 million? And the most perfect way to do that is to take the pressure off and to keep practicing getting to neutral and to keep making the best play in front of you based on the team you have, the information you have, and knowing the bigger vision you're running towards in your business. I think what's also, just using that analogy, I think what's helpful to remember in the world of sports, you can lose games and still win the championship. My dad raced cars and coached clients racing cars for, he was in that industry for like 50 years. And if you look at the Indy 500, I think what's really fascinating is you cannot finish first. You cannot win a race, but still win the overall Indy 500 because it's point-based. And so much of the racing world, I think this is true in football and any sport really. My stepson's playing tennis, this is true there too. But if we use the racing example for a moment, so much of, and I just went to go see my best friend in Texas, and her husband runs a racing team, so we were talking about this. But so much of this is, yes, you have to place, you have to have your best race, but a lot of it is about finishing, and finishing in kind of the top, 3-6 people, but consistently finishing really well. And if you win a couple races, but then you don't finish, it's called a do not finish because your car crapped out, because you spun out, because you had a crash. That is so much more detrimental than not coming in first place. And you can also win first place and not win the whole championship because then your car burnt out or the driver burnt out, or they then had a bunch of other races they didn't do as well because they put so much pressure on that race and on the car or on themselves they didn't perform the same moving forward. There's something to the consistency of really strategically showing up neutrally and just continuing to finish and do well. And you can win a whole championship. I was at one of the Indy 500s a couple of years ago, and the person who won, who's a family friend of ours, won the Indy 500 and did not win the race. He won the Indy 500 in. The same is true in business. You can win the game of business even though you might not win that single game, even though you might not have that play that you are executing on work perfectly. I win in the game of business every single day. My business is very successful. It's very sustainable. I am one of the most content, peaceful, happy people I know in and out of business. And there are plenty of plays, plenty of games we don't win, but we won, in air quotes, and we win the championship because we're showing up neutrally, we're showing up strategically, we're executing on that, and we're not holding it. We're not putting a lot of pressure on, and we know our job is to finish that game strategically, neutrally, to keep playing the play in front of us, and then play the next game and play the next game. And we can win the whole championship if we're doing that, if we don't get so locked into a single game being the pass or fail, right? This is true in launches, this isn't true if you run conversion events, this is true if you're building an audience. I mean, this is true for so many aspects of business. So with the whole idea of thinking like a CEO, getting to neutral, making those strategic decisions, I really invite you to hold that mindset as well, because I think that's what also really allows you to keep showing up to make those strategic decisions that allow you to get the results you want. So I think there's a little bit of like the macro, micro here, but I want to offer that because otherwise, just like everything in business, what we start to do is like, thinking like a CEO and making strategic decisions is like the new secret du jour and the new thing that like guarantees you get everything you want. And I want us to keep taking the pressure off of that, because that just becomes another slippery slope or another way to make yourself wrong. And that's not at all what this conversation is about. Okay, I think I covered all of the things. I've got a lot more examples. I feel like I gave you about a bunch. I don't know that we need more personal examples, but let me know in the comments if you want some more examples just in terms of looking at metrics, looking at data, and then understanding, from that CEO lens and understanding the business goals. I'll actually give you one more and then we'll hop off. But I think this might also be helpful. When I think about, so going back to really neutrally looking at the business and understanding when you're taking a look and making those strategic decisions, you want to know what your business goals are. You want to know your business values. You want to know what your model is, what you're driving, what results you're driving towards, and also what drives results for you in business. I think these are some of the things we want to keep in mind when we're looking at that information in business. And so if I just use myself as an example, I have a one-on-one only model, right? That is my model. My business vision and goals, right? That it is really focused around obviously serving all of you. That is a high value to me. And first and foremost, serving my clients and my team to the best of my ability. Really, like, that is my number one focus, and continuing to keep that full. And so when we look at metrics and we look at data with things like content and how content is performing, there are certain data points and metrics where if I look, for example, at how a post performs, any single post, I know there are certain hacks, so to say, to like work the algorithm or to boost more engagement that would get me more visible and get me more likes on a post or get me more comments on a post. And I also know that some of those hacks will work if that is my goal. If I know my goal is like get some likes, get some comments on a post. I also know those hacks are directly opposed to the type of content I know builds the type of relationship that brings me a conversion, that brings me a client. And specifically for me, what's really important, if we go back to those values we were talking about, it's not just the goal of having one-on-one clients in my business, but one of my values is long-term. I work with many of my clients for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. I would love to work with clients for 10 years at a time, right? I thrive in those deep long-term relationships. So one of my goals is not just booking a client, but booking a client that's a really great fit that I can partner with long-term, that I can really get in their business with them and grow and scale with them. So I know that if I know that is my goal and I know that is my value, while there might be some hacks that could have a post blow up or have a post get a lot more visibility or have a post get a lot more comments, if what is required to do that is opposed to what is actually my goal, it really helps me as a CEO to take a look at that information and to very clearly make a strategic decision in terms of what kind of content I want to create, and understand then what the metrics on the other side of that are and what they're telling me and why they are what they are. And then also to know in my back pocket where it's like, cool, if we just want to like have a little visibility boost, like here's a trick we can pull out of our pocket. So hopefully that is helpful, but that is both having the neutral mindset to look at that, to discern that, that's how you can make a strategic decision. But I think having that neutral mindset and keeping the goal, the vision, the values, what drives results, understanding that and keeping that front focus and not making metrics, data mean something personal also makes it a lot easier than not to get suddenly stuck down a rabbit hole like, but this is the thing I know I can do to hack the algorithm. And hopefully that makes sense. Actually, here's another example. when we invite people or when we allow people into this group, I turn down more people for this Facebook group than we allow into the group, hands down. I think we have deleted, I've told you, we've deleted hundreds, if not thousands. We've deleted on my Instagram account probably 3,000 or 4,000 people, probably a couple thousand people in this group. And on any given day, let's say I don't know how many requests we have. I'm making up these numbers, but right now we have 250 people waiting to join the group, and maybe 50 of those people will accept into the group. And I'm sharing this because the reason we can make that strategic decision is I know my goals, I know my values, I know what's important for me inside this group. I also know what supports this group, being the group I want it to be in terms of the community I want to build, how I want it to support and serve all of you, also what supports my business. And that makes it very easy to take the ego out, where it's like, well, let's just get more and more people in here, right? We could have 3,000 more people in this group easy if that's the metric that mattered to me. It'd be so easy to let ego get into that and to just like focus on that and let that drive decisions, as opposed to really getting to neutral, taking the ego out of that, taking a look at, again, goals, values, what drives results, what is the vision, what is everything that we want here, and using that as the lens to neutrally take a look at what's going on and to make a strategic decision from that. So I want to keep bringing this back to seeing you can do this all over your business, and this is just going to help you really make the decision, the next play that really serves your long-term results in business. All right. Hope this was helpful for you. I didn't see any questions, but if you have questions, throw them at me and I'll check on the replay. And then don't forget, if you want to join me for Sell Out Without Feeling Like a Sellout, that is my free, well, it's not always free, but that is my 6-week sales course. We walk through the clarity, mindset, strategy, and action of building a sales process of selling out your business without the ick factor, without the manipulation, without the grossness. I know that is something so many people worry about. This is the process that's helped me build a booked out business. We've been booked out for over 4.5 years, maybe 5 years now. It's helped me make 1.2, something like that, million revenue from one-on-one alone. We've made $700K in the last 2 years from one-on-one alone. This is what's supporting me to support my clients to make 7 figures. We had 11 clients in 1 year make 6 figures. Many more make multi-6. Many of those clients have gone on to make multi-6. I've helped 3 clients scale to $1 million now. These are all the thinkings and thought processes behind those sales processes and their sales processes. Sales are so essential in your business. It's all in this course. It's usually $99, which I think is already the most ridiculous price, intentionally so, because I want it to be an easy yes for you. But until June 30th, you can snag that for free. I would love to have you as my guest. It would make me so happy. I will drop a link for that. And don't forget to sign up if you want to join me. If you have questions, again, drop them below. And I'll be back next week with another fun topic to dive into. Bye, y'all. And where do I end this here?